We're joined by Paul O'Sullivan, a security consultant who was on the scene there following that explosion. Paul, thank you for joining us on Morning News today. You were on the scene. What did it look like to you?
Well, it looked like a typical, bombing of a building that's taken place. It was clearly intended to cause injury. You know, there's a number of different types of bombs that are used out there these days, and this type of bomb, I imagine it had some shrapnel packed into it, so it was intended to maim and kill. Now, the big question, I think, in everybody's mind is who was behind the bomb? Because at the end of the day, not everything that Krejcir says is the truth. You know, he is a convicted criminal, and he's got no grounds to tell the truth, because if he was to tell the truth, he'd have to admit that he's behind most of the activities that have been going on.
Well, Paul, you were on the scene. Was there no sign of Radovan Krejcir there at any point after this all happened yesterday?
No, Krejcir left a short while before the bombing took place. So, it leaves a big question mark. If it was my shop, if I owned a shop, of course we all know it's not a proper shop, it's just a front for stolen goods. But if it was my shop, I would have been back there to find out what was going on. And Krejcir instead goes into hiding. Now, I think this brings to 12 the total of people associated with Krejcir that have died in South Africa in the 4 years that he's been here, or 4.5 years that he's been here. So I think what we need to do now is chase him back to where he belongs.
Paul, you've been keeping track of Radovan Krejcir. Obviously, you know a lot about him and his background. If somebody out there were to target him, who would want to do this?
Well, what you've got to remember is that before Radovan Krejcir came on the scene, the criminal activities that he's now engaged in were being carried out by South Africans. And now, they don't have a competition commission in the Underworld. So if somebody comes in and starts taking your business, you don't trot off to the competition commission or the High Court and bring an action against them to stop them from taking your business. In the Underworld, if somebody takes your business, you either go and break their legs, or you kill them, or you send them some sort of a warning to scare them away. So one could logically make the assumption that if Krejcir's not behind these killings, then it's somebody that he's upset.
We know that when there was the other incident outside his premises, the one with the James Bond-style guns coming out of the car, and it had just missed his car and all of that, a lot of people were saying, yes, he was behind it. What would he be hoping to prove if, and I say if, he were the one who, he was the person behind all of these things and just staging them?
Well, look, you have to remember that Krejcir is a very, very intelligent, extremely intelligent criminal. He's not your average Joe. And he plots and plans. Probably, a large part of his waking day, he's plotting and planning. Now, there could be a number of rationale. If you look at it now, he's applied for political asylum in this country. He's trying to create the impression that the Czech government, if he went back to the Czech Republic, the Czech government would kill him. Nothing could be further from the truth. They would just pop him into jail where he belongs, because he's committed an enormous amount of crime in the Czech Republic. In fact, half of the people on his payroll are wanted criminals in different parts of the world. So he might be, or he would have a motive for creating the impression that somebody wants him dead to bolster his unlawful application for political asylum. At the end of the day, if him being in South Africa has to result in now 12 people dying, it'd be far better if we just ship him back to where he belongs. And I'm saying if he's committed, well, he has committed a number of offences here, and I've got prima facie evidence of that. In fact, incontrovertible evidence of the crimes that he's committed. And some of them extremely serious crimes. And what we need to do now, and I think the Hawks are busy with it, I believe his world is getting very, very small now. In fact, as you and I are talking right now, a certain agency of the state is at the High Court, and an urgent application, will be issued later today, and we'll see things starting to turn very quickly against Mr. Krejcir.
An application for what, Paul, if you can give us a little more detail?
Well, I'm afraid to do this to you, but I've been sworn to secrecy. So what you have to do is just watch this space. But certainly before the sun sets today, Mr. Krejcir is going to find out that South Africa is not as lawless as he's been trying to make it out.
All right, Paul. Now, like I say, you know a lot about Radovan Krejcir. You know about his associates. Any idea who the two people who were killed are? Are they associates of his?
The one chap is South African, a coloured guy by the name of Ronnie. I can't remember his surname. Now, Ronnie is one of Krejcir's, or was one of Krejcir's strong-arm men. Ronnie has been seen in a number of instances of extortion, where they've, threatened people to get money out of them. Part of Radovan Krejcir's activities includes protection racketeering. Now, I have sworn statements from people where Ronnie has personally been present, assaulting people or threatening people with guns in order to get them to pay money to Radovan Krejcir. That's the first person. The other guy is a fugitive from the Czech Republic, where he's wanted. I think he was sentenced to 5 years in prison in absentia for fraud. And the fraudulent activities he was involved in were on the periphery of Radovan Krejcir's own fraudulent activities in the Czech Republic. So basically, two dead criminals. And I'm not intending to show any happiness there, but that they are criminals. Now, I believe the best place for criminals is prison. I don't believe in the death penalty. So the other three people, it's my understanding that two of them were staff members, and the third person was a quote-unquote customer. Now, Krejcir's business is not a lawful business. If you have a look at the photographs of the shop, you can see it talks about instant cash loans.
Yes. Jewelry and all
he runs a pawn shop. Now, we've been carrying out surveillance on that shop for quite some time, and a large number, I would say somewhere in the region between 70 and 80% of the so-called customers of that shop are people who go there to sell stolen jewelry. So if you're sitting at home and people invade your home and tie you up and steal all the family jewelry, the chances are that a lot of that jewelry is going to find its way into that type of business.
Well, Paul, like you say, you've got all of the surveillance is being done. There's a lot of evidence that suggests that this is not kosher, if I could use the word. So why has nothing been done? In your opinion, why isn't anything being done? Like you say, he will find out later today that it's not a safe haven for criminals. South Africa is not a safe haven for criminals. But why has this been allowed to go on for so long?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily. We got very short memories about some of the things that have happened. We all tend to remember the bad things and not the good things. I remember 2.5 years ago now, standing on the roadside in Kloof Road in Bedfordview with a helicopter overhead, when 50 members of the task force were breaking into Krejcir's house and in an attempt to arrest him. And he went into hiding for 3 or 4 days and then resurfaced and handed himself in and was released on bail after his lawyers got up and lied to the court. Now, what we have over here is we have a man who's got bottomless pits of cash. It's not his own cash, needless to say, because he actually hasn't done a day's work in his life. But he's got the proceeds of crime, and he's feeding that proceeds of crime into the pockets of very devious lawyers. And the net result is you end up with witnesses, state witnesses, who are afraid to testify against him.
All right, Paul, we're a bit pushed for time, so I've got one quick question for you, last one, if you can do it for me in a nutshell. Any idea where Radovan Krejcir could be at the moment?
Well, he's at home. He's hiding behind closed gates.
All right.
News that moves. eNCA.com.